Russ Marvel.
Russ, tell me a little about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Gary, Indiana. Nice place to be from. Went to high school at Calumet High School between Gary and Hammond, a little suburb area. And then I went to college at North Carolina State.
So tell me about your high school career for basketball and your college career for basketball, and also which one did you enjoy more?
In high school, it was kind of a roller coaster. I was very small, feisty. In fact, I would not have made the freshman team had I not gotten a fight because one of the bigger kids was kind of pushing me around, and I didn't like that. And the coach told me years later that he didn't think I'd ever amount to anything. I was too small, and I actually started on the junior varsity my sophomore year as a point guard. I was just barely 6 foot tall. Then I had a growth spurt and went right to 6'5" or a little better, and started on the varsity at center. And we had a pretty good team. And then I grew another half inch in my senior year. I was 6'6.5". Had several scholarships. Purdue was probably my biggest suitor in the Big Ten, although I had offers from Indiana, Wisconsin, and I can't remember any others, but all kinds of other ones, smaller schools. So I enjoyed that and was recruited very heavily by North Carolina State. I went there, and which one did I enjoy the most? They're completely different animals, because in college I was on television a lot. We had the Everett Case show on Sundays, and we would have to get dressed up and go be on television, local television. And this is back in 1960 when television was really something. You know, now everybody's on television. In college, we flew to all of our away games. We had private jets that took us to our games. We would leave, meet at the airport, Raleigh-Durham Airport at 1 o'clock, fly to all kinds of different places, fly back that night, get to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, and be expected to be in class the next day, which I didn't always make. I'll admit to that. It was, when you play that hard and then you're dehydrated and you still got an hour and a half plane flight and get back to your dorm. I didn't make it to a lot of those 8 o'clock classes the next day. So and you're known all over the state then, because you're on television, and especially in the ACC or Big Four, we call them: Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest, and NC State. The attendance at the game was just, every place was jam-packed. So a lot of people knew you. It's completely different, but I enjoyed high school a lot because I was better than everybody.
So at college level, who are some of the players that you had the pleasure to play against?
Well, most people remember Billy Packer. He's went to Wake Forest the same 4 years that I was at North Carolina State. And Larry Brown, who's a big-time coach in the NBA and college. There were several of them. I played in a college all-star, pro all-star tournament after my senior year, and our team had two pros, Wayne Greer and Hal Embry, and Wayne Embry and Hal Gear, actually. And so on Friday night, I got to guard Jerry West. And on Saturday night, I got to guard Oscar Robertson on Saturday night. And then on Sunday afternoon, the fourth team in this tournament was the Ohio State Buckeyes, and when they had Jerry Lucas and all those guys, and I got to guard all of them, Siegfried and Havlicek. I got to guard each one of them separately, and then I went into shock about how bad a player I was. But Wayne Embry was really nice gentleman, biggest individual I ever met. And I was just sitting there hanging my head down after the game was over, and he said, "What's the matter, Russ?" I said, "Well," I said, "I thought I could play basketball, but I don't feel that way now." And he said, "Don't worry, nobody in the NBA can guard those guys either." And I thought, yeah, that's probably what I think I was going to do, stop any one of them.
How tall are you, and how did you become so tall?
Well, I am 6'7", probably a little less than that now. I guess when you get older, you shrink. But like I say, when I was in high school, I graduated high school 6'6", and I graduated college 6'7". So I grew about a quarter of an inch a year there for a while. My family, my dad was about 6 foot tall, so he wasn't short, but no tall people in that side. But my mother's family, the men were pretty tall. She had a couple brothers that were 6'3", 6'4", and she fed me really well. So I guess that was what happened.
Favorite gym to play in besides North Carolina State in college?
Cameron Indoor, Duke University. It's actually the exact same footprint as William Neal Reynolds Coliseum, only it's smaller. The people there in North Carolina are crazy over their sports, and you have to remember that between Raleigh and Durham, where Duke is, it's only 26 miles. And between Duke and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill is 8 miles. And so, and 4 miles north of Raleigh is the town of Wake Forest. So all 4 of those colleges were within 30 miles of each other. And you can imagine what it's like trying to get a ticket or whatever. But playing, when we would play there, it was just, you couldn't, your ears couldn't stand the noise. It was wonderful.
So what were your parents' names?
My dad was Russ Marvel. No one knew that hardly, except the people in Noble, Illinois. But he was Jack to everybody else. And there's no rhyme or reason why he called himself Jack. That's just what he wanted to be called. So that's what everybody did. And Monette is my mother. Wonderful, wonderful lady. They both lived nice, long lives, and we're just great people with good sense of humor.
An accomplishment. You were asked to be on the Harlem Globetrotters, and you made the team. Tell me about that thing.
Okay, after my senior year at college at North Carolina State, I got a letter from the Chicago Zephyrs of the American Basketball League. They were in direct competition to the NBA, a new league. And Abe Saperstein, who was the owner of the Globetrotters, was the owner of that team. And I got a letter from him. And, you know, when I looked at it, I go, holy cow, Abe Saperstein sent me a letter. And he was inviting me to Chicago for a weekend to try out for the Chicago Zephyrs. And so he sent me a plane ticket, and off I flew. They picked me up in a nice limousine at the airport and put me up in a motel. Me and it was about 15 or 20 other people, very large people. And we played basketball for 3 days. We'd taken breaks, but they furnished all our meals and took us to a Cubs game. And when the second day was over, during the third day, he called me into his office and said, "Russ, you made the team. I'm looking forward to having you on the Chicago Zephyrs." And I said, "Well, there's a problem. I did not graduate in 4 years, and I promised my father that I would graduate. So I've got to go back to Raleigh for the fall semester." He said, "Well, would you still want to be on the team?" And January? And I said, yes, for definitely. He said, okay, you let me know when you're coming back and you will be on the team. He said, now, the other thing is, I would like for you to get some experience, so I would like for you to go with the Harlem Globetrotters for a month or a month and a half and play for the Washington Senators. And that's when the Harlem Globetrotters were all black and Washington was all white. And I had just gotten married 2 weeks before I went there, and I thought, I don't think my wife would like that, and I'm not going to ask her. So I'll have to say no. I have to decline that.
You were 6'6" and you could dunk so easily. Tell me about all that in college.
Well, first of all, my freshman year and maybe my sophomore, I'm not sure, it was illegal to dunk. Wilt Chamberlain did it too easily, and so they said that's not basketball, so you can't dunk. But then my junior and senior years, it was legal, and I got a few in, but it was more difficult then because of the charging rules. The little guys, Billy Packer was one of them, would run in there and get in front of you and flop, and then you'd have, your dunk wouldn't count, and you'd have a foul on you. So I didn't really dunk all that much. And then I talked about the industrial league here. It was illegal there because they were afraid we'd break the rim. But I made myself a promise that I would stay in good enough shape to dunk a basketball when I was 50. And I swam 50 laps every night, and I dunked a basketball almost my 51st birthday. I could still just flat foot. I couldn't run and do it because I would fall, but I could stand flat-footed and jump and dunk when I was 50.
Tell me about this accident you were telling me about and what happened.
Well, my wife and I and two other couples were celebrating some of them birthdays, some of them wedding anniversaries. And so we decided we wanted to go out to a fancy restaurant in St. Louis and see the Phantom of the Opera. So we got all dressed up, and I had the brilliant idea of renting a limousine to take us from the Fox Theater actually to dinner and then back. And so we were on our way to dinner, and the limousine driver, I was sitting in the back seat facing forward and in the middle, and I could see out the front, and I could see that there was a red light ahead of us, and he wasn't slowing down. And I thought, well, he's going to, and he didn't. And I hollered, "You're running a red light." And he did, he ran it, and we got hit from the side. And my wife was on one side, and another lady was on the other side, and I put both of my arms up to protect them. And when we hit, the guy hit us and took the limousine into the curb, and all four of the tires on the limousine just folded over. And there I was, and my feet were on, there's a lady in front of me, and both of my feet were on her, and I was completely paralyzed from the neck down. And all I could move was my eyes, and everybody else was pretty shook up. But my wife crushed her collarbone and was in a lot of pain, but most the others didn't have much problem, but they had a heck of a time. I was still 6'7", but I was 250 pounds now. And so they took me to the hospital, and I was in intensive care, and then I was completely paralyzed from the neck down for 9 days. And then I started getting movement back, and they took me to a rehabilitation center, and I did therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, recreational therapy, and they all said, all the therapists, first of all, the hall I was on was a fairly long hall, was all spinal cord injuries at this rehab center. So these people work with people like me all the time. And you go down nurse's station, turn left, it was all brain injury. And of all the people that were in all those rooms, I was the only one to walk out of there. And I say I walked out, but you might call I wobbled out. I had a long, long way to go when I was in there for a month. It happened on Halloween. I got to go home the day before Thanksgiving. And then the real work of learning to walk, learning to do everything, unbelievable, difficult. Somebody who was an athlete, I started playing golf and I thought, well, I'm no good at this. Ended up being a 9 handicapper. And now I couldn't crawl and hit a golf ball. So it was a long, long road.
Staying active, I mean, swimming wise. Tell me about that.
Well, I'm very limited to what to do. I'm trying to get back to where I can walk and play golf, and I'm up to 6 or 7 holes now. But I had a lot of trouble with my spinal cord injury. Made my body completely different. One of the, I guess, good things and very bad thing is I don't feel pain from midway down my right leg. So I don't feel any pain in my knee, ankle, or anything on my right leg. And I was funny when I jumped playing basketball. If I jumped off both feet, I put my weight on my right leg and jumped off my right leg and reached with my right hand. That's different from most people. They jump off their left foot and they reach with their right. So I have a lot of wear and tear on my right hip and my right knee. And so they replaced my hip because it had no cartilage, and the right one didn't have any cartilage, but it didn't hurt. And they said, well, you don't need to redo anything if it doesn't hurt. So, okay, well, it doesn't hurt. Well, I got very crooked, very bow-legged, and I couldn't walk. I mean, I just could not walk without crutches or a cane or something. And so finally, after a lot of x-rays and a lot of everything, they said, the problem with your hip is your knee. So if you replace your knee, that'll make your hip line up better and make it work. So that's what I'm working on now. And I can walk in a swimming pool, but and down in Florida where we have our winter place, I can walk in the pool there because there's nobody else in it. I haven't gotten the nerve to go to the Workman's Center, which I love, because the danger of the COVID. But I'm walking on the country club now, just started last week. I was walking with 2 canes, and I'm doing much, much better. And I play golf. I don't know if you've seen me play golf, but I play by myself. I can't slow other groups down, but I'm trying to work at playing 18 holes yet this before Christmas. That is my goal.
Dennis Custer, T-Topo's head basketball coach, of course, years back, but you were friends with him. What was that like?
Oh, we had a great time. As I said, I didn't like to shoot basketball. I didn't care anything about scoring points. Dennis loved to score points. So and we were on the same team, Jerry Moon's team. And so if I'd get a rebound, I would very quickly look at Dennis and I'd throw him the ball and he'd shoot it. And sometimes I'd rebound that one and throw it back to him too. And he just really enjoyed doing that. And he kept himself in great shape. And so I lived over on Ikey Street. And I'm not sure where he lived, but he came running by there one evening just as I was getting ready to run. So I said, let's go. And so we ran down 2nd Street or 4th Street, I forget what the name of this street is, but we would run back and forth, and we would go in front of my house and run sprints. And so we were on the same team for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. And had a good time till he got married, and he put on so much weight that there's no way. He tried to play one time and he turned his ankle real bad. You know, the ankles just wouldn't hold the extra weight. But just a great guy. Have parents that give you really good genes to make you tall and make you fast and make you be able to jump. And that still wouldn't be enough. They have to instill in you the ability and the desire to play through a lot of pain and work so much harder than anybody else to get where you are. As I told you before, I would not have made the freshman team had I not got in a fight with one of my teammates because he tried to steal the ball from me, and I didn't like that. And so you've got to have all of those things. Without height, you can be good at everything else, and it's just not going to happen for you. Without strength, you're in trouble because they will treat you very poorly. If you can't shoot, you can't. It's the team that makes the most points that wins, and so you won't be very good for your team.
If you weren't playing college basketball, what would you have done?
I was already planning to work in the steel mills. Gary had 4 steel mills plus all kinds of rolling mills and stuff like that. And I talked to several people about, because you have to have a sponsor, somebody like whose dad works there and is a supervisor or whatever. And that's what I was actually, I was at a drive-in movie. People don't know what that is, but I was at one with my buddies, and having a beverage, and we were talking about that, who could help me get a job. And then I said, you know what? Last year I got a letter from North Carolina State wanting me to go there and play basketball. I think I'm going to find out what happened, why they never sent me a letter back. And I can go down there for a semester and party and have a good time, and then I'll come back and get a job. And so I went in to see the coach the next day, and I said, Coach, I got a letter last year from North Carolina State asking about giving me a scholarship, and I never heard back from him. He said, oh yeah, you did. You got 2 more letters here. I said, I do? He said, oh yeah, you've got like 10 letters from colleges. And he had them in his drawer, and I don't know when he was ever going to give them to me, probably never. But he gave them to me, and I called a letter, the number of North Carolina State, and sure enough, an airplane ticket came to me, and off of the flight I went to Raleigh, North Carolina, and signed a contract to play basketball there.
Tell me about who your biggest role model was.
My biggest role model was my roommate, Denny Lutz, who was an excellent high school player, very highly recruited. He had trouble scoring. He wasn't as good a player as anyone expected him to be, but he was always a perfect gentleman, a perfect role model for me. He came from a family that had some problems, and he battled through those with a smile and would do anything in the world for you, along with working harder than anybody else at the game of basketball. Denny Lutz. Well, when I graduated from college, I had offers from places I didn't even apply to. I got letters from school districts wanting me to be assistant basketball coaches, teaching, because I was in education. And that's what I wanted to do. But my wife at the time wanted to go back to Gary, Indiana. And I go, why? And she said, well, I want to be in a large town. So I said, okay. And we went back there, and I worked in the steel mills. I worked in a gas station for a while, and then I worked in the steel mills. And I basically hated it. I made lots of money. I got rid of all of our debts. I got married my senior year in college, and we got rid of our debt and everything, and we were doing very fine financially, but it wasn't for me. And my dad called me. He has a farm down in Noble, a little 33 and a third acre farm that he was going to retire on. And he called and said, they need a basketball coach here. So I talked with the superintendent, and he basically hired me over the phone. This is Noble, Illinois, and there's a teacher shortage, and so I just pretty much came down and stayed there out on his farm for a few years. And while I was doing that, I was trying to make a living. So I worked on, I think, 10 jobs. I was a head coach, which means I was head basketball coach in the winter, head baseball in the fall, head track coach in the spring, athletic director, freshman class sponsor. I worked in a gas station every weekend. I ran a little league program in the summertime, in the evenings, and worked full time at the AMF plant for 40 hours during the week, and started working on my master's degree. All those things at one time. Every Wednesday I would drive to Charleston and take classes on school administration. And all this for a third of the money I was making. My first contract at Noble was for $4,700. And that's for coaching everything, athletic director and full-time teacher. So when I finished with that, I just knew that education is what I wanted to do. And I got my master's degree in administration, and Noble decided they didn't want me to coach anymore, so I went to Charleston, Illinois, as assistant principal to junior high for 1 year, and finished up my paperwork for a year past my master's. And I got a call, it actually came to my office. The head of the administration department at Eastern wanted me to apply for the principalship at Effingham. I go, that's a large school. I have actually 5 months worth of experience at an assistant principal at junior high. And he said, oh, you probably won't get it, but I just want you to do it anyway. And so I said, well, I promised Mr. Dively I'd stay here for at least 2 years. He said, I'll be right back. And he comes back and said, he said it's okay. And I wonder if that was a compliment or if he was trying to get rid of me. But anyway, I said, okay. I applied for it, and sure enough, I got the job. And 25 years later, I was still here being high school principal.
What is one thing that we did not mention that you would like to talk about for a final story?
I would like for the people here in Effingham County to realize what a wonderful place this is to live. When I was in the hospital, I had no control over any of my body functions. I couldn't move any of my limbs. I wasn't sure when my next breath was coming. And my lovely wife, we had a whole box of cards with prayers in them from students and church friends, just good old Effingham County people. And she would read the cards to me. And I could just feel myself being lifted up. God bless Effingham.